them.
Okay, so I'm particularly interested in, we've got the facts, we discussed the emotions about many things, Ramadan, Eid coming up, but also around what's happening in Palestine, Israel, Al-Aqsa. But let's understand that in numbers, in data form, okay? So Tonya Khoury certainly does that better than most. She's the director, founder of Acumen Media. Tonya, good chatting to you. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam, nice to be here, Ashraf, and almost on the very end of end of Ramadan, huh?
Yeah, not quite end of Eid, but I think that point. I trust you. I trust you being well, Tonya, and we've tasked you, of course, with the sort of number crunching. Okay, so let's start maybe with the current affairs part, which is what's happening in the Middle East. You put some numbers together. What have you discovered?
13.1 million posts across the world in the last 24 hours about Al-Aqsa and also about the entire situation in Israel and Palestine. The outpouring of grief, support, the lack of support from Arab nations is very clear. People are calling that out. And very much, Ashraf, just the most horrific conversations that I've been witness to since last year this time. Every year, isn't it? It's every year. So 13.1 million South Africans certainly involved in the conversation. South Africa over 86,000 results from South Africans in the past 7 days. And primarily, the words they're using is, on the negative side, certainly the words terrorists, apartheid, stop Jerusalem expulsions, Sheikh Jarrah coming into that conversation, Gaza under attack also onto that conversation. And on the right-hand side, where the positivity comes in, is Palestinian Lives Matter, fly the flag, etc., and comments like that. South Africa, of course, making a stand yesterday against the Israeli attacks. And then subsequently marching in Cape Town. I'm not sure if you witnessed that.
But I did. I certainly did, yeah.
Definitely a very, very emotional conversation, as it always is. I personally am devastated. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe you would attack people in their place of worship. I see this morning the narrative has changed, and there were apparently rocks being stored in the mosque. I can't imagine a solitary Muslim storing a rock in a mosque, because that wouldn't mean we go anywhere near heaven, would it?
Wow.
I'm sorry. Like I can't even.
Dome of the Rock is something that people will resonate with in terms of what you're saying. So there we are. In terms of your word chart, right? I mean, you mentioned some words. Which one are the 5 biggest ones?
Certainly, Al-Aqsa attacks is one of the biggest ones. That particular hashtag absolutely taking the conversation over the first couple of days. Well, when we saw the original story break. But then Free Palestine and Save Sheikh Jarrah being one of the other 2 big, those are the 3 big ones coming out of this particular story. What I found fascinating, though, Ashraf, is that our Ramadan compliments, our Ramadan well wishes that you normally see across the timelines now, specifically towards the end of Ramadan, have been replaced with a negative net sentiment as the story has impacted across the world.
But that may change, I think, in the next day or so. So if we spoke to you next week, we may get a different story, right? Just one last thing about the Middle East problem. Apartheid Israel. How many mentions did that phrase get?
Yeah, absolutely. Apartheid Israel and Israeli apartheid, those 2 phrases coming into the study very much so. In fact, they're a very large percentage, with BDS and their movement, and they're also making a very big contribution on the social networks. And that story is certainly very big. Yeah. Katrata Foundation stood up yesterday, also carried the apartheid hashtag, and those just amplify the conversation. And South Africans, our legacy is that we are with Palestine. I mean, Mandela said it from the beginning, didn't he?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Okay, let's move on then to Ramadan. So you're saying at the moment it's been overshadowed, but also we now at the tail end. Well, maybe here's the first thought. Ramadan, the entire month, right? What were you able to pick up in Ramadan, around Ramadan
So
numbers?
Ramadan itself, a very big conversation, lots of positivity, specifically earlier on in the month. I think I've sent you a net sentiment graph where you can see all the positive messages flying
Yeah.
around. And then all of a sudden, with the attack on the mosque, the sentiment dipped. And then when you do see positive sentiment, it's people wishing well to the Palestinians over this period of the last nights of Ramadan.
Okay, and the word fasting, yeah.
A feeling of solidarity comes across very strongly as well. How one ummah is standing against what has happened here, and that's what makes us Muslim. A lot of those sort of comments coming out, and also, I mean, almost the anticipation of Eid has been muted because of the story.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Eid. So Eid, as you know, it's this unique custom of trying to sight the crescent. So Eid maybe tomorrow, it may not be tomorrow. It's certainly tomorrow. I think in the parts of the Middle East now, we could be one day later, but we don't know. It may be tomorrow. What sentiments are you getting around Eid so far? Eid al-Fitr, yeah.
Yes, certainly. I mean, there is an anticipation for Eid, but like I said, almost as if Eid is not being mentioned as much as it would have been normally. The focus is really on what has happened in the Muslim world and the lack of response from the Muslim world itself.
Okay, and yeah, is there anything else? I mean, you would want to look out for around Eid going over the next 2 days? I mean, let's say from where you would like to look at words and data, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly Eid is going to be one of the big stories this week. We wrap up South Africa's big stories anyway, and Eid is certain to take a large chunk of the data. That is normal. But right at the moment, I really do believe our top story at Acumen Media this week will be Palestine and what happened over the past days. And this constant rhetoric that seems to go from the left to the right, to the left to the right, and a constant diversion from the actual situation at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're saying, to confirm, you're saying that story of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Palestine, Israel, apartheid, Israeli apartheid, you're saying it's a dominant story in the South African political space. We're not just talking worldwide. Even in South Africa, compared to, say, Ace Magashule and the ANC?
Well, let me give you a perspective. Compared to Ramadan, 11,000, and Free Palestine, 53,000. So that's a 5 times as big as Ramadan. Wow. So that's a really big number.
And
as far as Ace Magashule is concerned, he's around the 80,000 mark. So it's a very big story. It's a very big story.
Okay.
And
but it also still tells you that it still tells you Ramadan in South Africa, or rather Israel and Palestine in South Africa, 50,000 versus Ace Magashule, who's from the ruling party. I mean, that gives you some perspective. Tonya, let's leave it at that. Just time to wish you well over the last days of the fast of Ramadan, and Eid Mubarak to you. And if I know you're in KZN, if you were in Joburg, I'd invite you, but you're not coming this way, so maybe somebody from KZN or Durban would invite you and your family to spend Eid with them, right?
Inshallah, Ashraf, and the same to you and your family as well. Thank you so much. Salam.
There we are. Right, salam. There we are, Tonya Khoury, some fascinating insights into the data points. So there you are, 55,000 around just the Palestinian issue, right? And you can follow Tonya at, is it Accenture Media? I think it's Acumen Media, Accenture, no, Acumen Media. You can certainly follow her. But we'll follow her on all social media. I can tell you that now. Just you'll see, I follow her. You'll be able to connect with her. We're going to get another perspective on responses around Palestine in a moment. And Nadia Bulbulia is featured in Champion People.